Hello and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. My name is Ayo Makine. Welcome to the program this morning. Well, today we have, go straight to the papers, and we have Dayo Akintobi joining us this morning for the analysis of some of the headlines. He's editor-in-chief today, Community Newspapers, TCN. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Always a pleasure to be here.
I'm spoiled for choice. Because like every paper has a different angle to every issue on the front burner this morning. But of course, the one that everyone seems to be talking about is the removal of subsidy. So Daily Trust newspaper leads this morning the gamut of that one. FG mulls 2.4 trillion naira palliative as 1.8 trillion naira annual subsidy goes. That's what the Daily Trust newspaper leads with. No provision in 2022 budget, says Senate. 5,000 naira transport grant for 6 to 12 months, ascribed to the minister. No template to reach the poor, that's in parentheses. Find out who said it on the inside pages. And Labour knocks government, says palliative abate.
Well, we've all been hoping to get rid of this subsidy for a very long time on the condition that the effects can be cushioned for the Nigerian people. And that's what the government is trying to do here by introducing this 5,000 naira transport subsidy. But it's fraught with quicksand because, first of all, there's no template by which you identify the poorest of the poor. Okay, they say 40 million people out of 200 million will be eligible to get this 5,000 naira transport stipend, which is supposed to cushion the effect of the removal of the subsidy. Because once the subsidy goes, the price of fuel is going to skyrocket, naturally, to what the market commands. And so, to cushion the effect for the poorest of the poor, they want to give everybody 5,000 naira a month transport allowance. First of all, there are a number of issues. They are not sure yet if they're giving for 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months. If they end up giving 5,000 naira a month to 40 million people, it comes to 200 billion. That 200 billion over 12 months comes to 2.4 trillion. Meanwhile, the subsidy itself is just 1.8. So essentially, we're going to be giving more money to save what we've already complained is too much. And so it doesn't seem to compute when you look at it. However, having said that, if it's given for only 6 months, that cuts it to 1.22 trillion, which is actually less than what is paid on the subsidy annually. However, I want to give a caveat that the transport subsidy is only for 1 year. So we will only spend that 1.8 or 2.4 trillion for 1 year and it's over and done with, unlike the subsidy which is annual and which is recurring and which continues to cost us money. So to get rid of the subsidy, we subsidize people's transportation for 1 year and it's over with.
I don't even want to begin. Well, this is a whole new conversation on its own, so let me just leave it there because...
But then again, having said that, how do we pick the 40 million poorest people? They say, okay, those who haven't had 5,000 naira in their bank
that conversation
accounts.
is on the front pages of the papers. I'm pretty sure that we're going to get to
when the poorest are
already.
unbanked.
Look at the leadership newspaper also,
Yes.
for instance. Subsidy removal. Senate experts query identity of beneficiaries of 2.4 trillion naira palliatives,
yes,
as the lead of the leadership newspaper this morning. And the story is on page 4. A couple of writers. No provision for palliatives in 2022 budget. It will last only 12 months as the palliatives, according to the federal government. I think you've spoken to this. So it's that query of who are these beneficiaries? Who are these 40 million people? Because according to the World Poverty Clock, we are very close to 100 million extreme poor. So is this palliative going to the poor or the extreme poor? That's another conversation altogether.
Or maybe to the party faithful.
Oh, well, that's another one altogether. Well, look at okay, right above the major story, beneath the nameplate, Air Nigeria plans takeoff in April 2022. Are you optimistic?
I'm a bit worried about that because April 2022 is 6 months away. And for something that was just announced yesterday. Starting an airline is not like starting a transportation company. To even get your airworthiness certificate takes a good 2 years. To negotiate for planes, to employ people, to train them.
They started the conversation, it was 2018 or 2019?
That was audio. Nothing ever happened. We just designed a logo.
What if something is happening, something has been happening and it wasn't in the public domain?
Nothing happened. It was just a logo that was designed, because the reason we know nothing happened is that this proposal was presented to the FEC, to the Federal Executive Council, 6 times. It was yesterday for the first time that it was even approved for consideration. As a result, nothing has been able to be done if it hadn't been approved in the past. So we're just starting from ground zero. And we've set a near impossible target of 6 months to do all the things that are necessary to get an airline up and running. I put it to you that it takes a minimum of 24 months, a minimum, because you have to negotiate leases on planes, you have to hire and train people, open branch offices, set up websites. There's so many things. To even get your airworthiness certificate alone, you go through trials and tests and things like that. So I'm a bit worried that I hope this is not another audio proposal whereby...
Well, maybe because, I mean, look at, for instance, the conversation around the governing of the airline.
Yes.
The federal government will have 5% stake.
Yes.
Nigerian investors will have 46% stake.
Yes.
So 51% altogether to Nigerians, and the foreign experts, technical, strategic foreign partners will take 49% partnership. Is that in any way likely to help speed up things?
Essentially, it's a PPP arrangement, public-private partnership, which we have always said government has no business in business anyway. Government's not efficient at running business. So that is a good structure to have, whereby private sector players will be the ones actually running the airline. So that gives it a good possibility of surviving and thriving, because, of course, private sector people have profit incentive, and as a result are bound to be more efficient and watch the bottom line a lot more carefully. However, having said that, even private sector players have to go through due process. There are processes that need to be followed scrupulously, because especially, remember, with airlines, safety is a big factor. Absolutely. So before you even get your airworthiness license, you go through so many safety tests.
You talked about airworthiness already like 3 times.
So I don't know how we're going to...
hope.
I don't know how we're going to get it done in 6 months. But it is a good thing. Let's encourage the government to get it done for national pride and for competitiveness in our skies.
The Vanguard newspaper is next, and it talks about the same story, leads with the same story. Petrol subsidy removal, 5,000 naira grant. Senate disagrees with FG. NLC, excuse me, NLC, TUC threaten showdown. Here we go again, right?
Here we go again.
The riders first. 5,000 naira transport grant for 40 million Nigerians not in budget 2022, says Senate Finance Committee Chairman. Grant to cost 2.4 trillion naira annually. FG caps implementation to 1 year. It's open invitation for civil unrest, says NLC. TUC shocked, insists negotiations ongoing. Stories on page 5.
Yes.
So it's pretty much, is it here we go again, really? Because according to TUC, negotiations around the removal of the subsidy has been on for quite a while now.
Absolutely.
So one is wondering, how far so far?
Well, I think for the government to have made a firm stand that they're taking it out in 2022, they must have carried the key stakeholders along, including labor, including the oil marketers, all the people that need to know have probably been carried along throughout this thing. Now, the Senate saying that it's not in the budget becomes an issue, because where do you get the funding from? However, on the other hand, and I'm actually quite impressed that the Senate is standing up to the executive. They're getting some teeth finally and trying to shed off that toga of being a rubber stamp assembly. So that's a good thing that they're standing up to the executive. But remember, they said they put subsidy in the budget for 2022. They allocated for subsidy. So that same money can now, after discussion, essentially they're just telling you, yes, it can be exchanged for each other. Just come and sit down and talk to us, give us the due respect of our office and carry us along. But the money does exist within the budget. It just needs to be rewritten.
Rerouted.
Yes, rerouted.
You know, every time I hear carry along, I remember the conversation we had with the governor of Rivers State that says carry along in politics is something else entirely. Okay,
It's
well,
a catchphrase.
direct primaries, INEC ready once president assents amended law. That's ascribed to the president of, beg your pardon, the INEC chairman, Yakubu. I wonder, do you wonder, as many do, why it's such an issue with politicians, the direct primaries thing?
I don't quite get it, except beyond the fact that direct primaries seem to emasculate certain categories of politicians, especially from the governors going on down. The excuse they're giving is that it would be overly cumbersome and expensive for INEC to oversee direct primaries in every single ward, constituency, state level, national level.
I'm not sure that's what really concerns them, because
I said that's the reason they are giving. That doesn't mean that that's the actual fact.
Okay.
However, the issue is direct primaries takes away power from certain players and vests the power in the entire party structure, which, of course, I think deepens democracy and makes people a lot more relevant in who ultimately gets party tickets.
Again, we wait to see. Everyone is all eyes on the president's office right now.
Yes.
Or is it the president's signature?
Yes, his assent.
Mr. and Mrs. Now, the wife is quarreling with the husband. It's my right to have a say in the running of this house. I'm your wife. And Mr. replies, okay then. The landlord has increased the rent. He's asking for 2 years' rent in advance. Now let me hear your say.
No, it's for Mr. to make the money, it's for Mrs. to spend it.
The Tribune is interested in the same story. Nigerian Tribune. 5,000 naira transportation grant not provided for in 2022 budget. Scribe to Senate says subsidy accommodated. It will last for only 12 months. Finance Minister says the story is on page 8. A lot has been said about this already. Sanwo-Olu presents 1.39 trillion naira 2022 budget. Infrastructure, education, top priorities. Activates 30-year development plan for Lagos. That development plan, I don't know, what do you make of it? All the while we talk about, national development plan, I dug back to find out that we've been having national development plans since like the 50s or the 60s. And first national development plan, second national development plan, and I'm wondering, are we even tracking the progress of those? But in Lagos, one would wonder whether or not, because it looks like there is some traction in that regard. Because I remember, I think the first plan was for like 25 years, which is supposed to elapse in 2025 or so. What do you make of it?
Lagos has been quite consistent with its development plan starting from 1999, and each successive administration has carried on from where the previous one left off, except for the immediate past administration that seemed to go off on a slight tangent that was a bit different from the way it had been done all along. But this current administration seems to have gone back to the original templates in terms of moving Lagos closer and closer towards becoming a mega city. Now, I remember the last development plan for Lagos State was a 13-year plan, I think done in 2012 or thereabouts by the Fashola administration. And we see today a lot of implementation of that original plan. And as it approaches its shelf life, the end of its shelf life, a new one has now been developed for 30 years. And the way Lagos has operated all along, I believe they do try to follow scrupulously the roadmap that's laid down for development. Now, you can also see the budget that's been passed for about 1.4 trillion naira, and its focus on infrastructure. I also like the fact that capital expenditure is about 60% as opposed to 40% for recurrent, which tells you that the finances of the state are ordered properly, because in many situations, many of the other states are in positions where their running costs, their personnel costs, their pension is taking up 80% of their IGR and their allocation. Okay. So Lagos is doing it right, and I like the fact that we're forward thinking. We're thinking 30 years is time of our grandchildren, and we're thinking that far ahead.
Well, you know, one of that document that I found, of course, not related to the budget, but it now talks about the transparency, accountability or transparency ratings. Lagos wasn't, you know, top on that list, and it was a little troubling. I think maybe it's something that the Lagos State government may want to speak to later. Right above the nameplate, NLC TUC rejects 340 naira planned petrol price. Says any unilateral decision will be resisted. Hike will plunge Nigeria into crisis, says Afenifere. Here we go again.
What do we want? Do we want this thing removed, or do we not want it removed? At the end of the day, we're all crying about the fact that the process is fraught with corruption and it's enriching just a few people. So we say, let's get rid of it so that the whole country can benefit. But on the other hand, there are so many terms and conditions that need to be put in place for it to be equitable and for it to not end up hurting the people we claim to be wanting to help.
Terms and conditions apply.
Yes. T&A. T&C, sorry.
Let's look at the Daily Times newspaper. It's on the same major story we're talking about. Proposed 5,000 naira monthly grant for poor Nigerians. Senate counters Finance Minister. Says no provision of monthly transport grant for 40 million Nigerians in 2022 budget. Insists fuel subsidy provided for in next year's appropriation bill. Well, you already spoke to this one. Let's just wait for how that conversation is going to happen, you know, between the two of them, just as you have said. Okay. Nigeria Air to take off April 2022. Says Sirica. FG, Nigerians to hold 51% equity, and on, of course, pretty much the same stories. The New Telegraph is interested in the national carrier. Sirica. Finally, national carrier takes off April 2022. Lead of the New Telegraph newspaper this morning. FG to hold 5% equity. Entrepreneurs 46%. And foreign investors 49%. Nigeria will generate about 70,000 jobs in first few years. That's what you have on the front page of the paper this morning. The New Telegraph is looking at the same thing. Nigeria Air project to create over 70,000 jobs in 2022. FG, subscribe to FG, as FEC approves 1.49 billion naira for automated civil aviation regulatory equipment. That's the front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. And right under the nameplate, Lagos projects 59% capital expenditure as Sanwo-Olu presents 1.38 trillion naira proposed year 2022 budget. That's right there on the front page. 45% price hike. Sentiment of Nigerians not favorable to subsidy removal. That's ascribed to former LCC IDG. I'm just wondering, is the challenge removing the subsidy or the process of getting that done?
No, well, not at all. The problem with the perception from the public is that when this thing is removed, it'll spiral inflation even out of control, even greater than now, and it'll have deleterious effects on the bottom line of the average Nigerian. So the process of removing it is very simple and straightforward. It's been bandied about for years and years and years now. To actually get it done is not the problem. What is causing the logjam is getting the stakeholders to buy into the notion of the benefit of the subsidy removal. Many people are still not convinced that it's the right thing to do.
But do you blame these many people that you just talked about? We've taken loans now for how long? And we hear it's for infrastructure development, it's for this, it's for that, and people do not feel it. Okay, we hear that inflation is slowing down, but the prices of food items, of commodities that people buy on a daily basis are not slowing down equitably. So do you blame people for their perception?
No, I blame government for not creating adequate awareness. The communication apparatus is a bit faulty, and they're not carrying people along and making people understand why government is doing what it's doing and why it is beneficial to the people, even in the long term. There are many initiatives where in the beginning you have to tighten your belt, but over the long term you begin to see the benefits. I think that fuel subsidy is one such that down the road will ultimately benefit people, as long as the right cushioning effects are put in place. I worry about the roads. I worry about things like public transport, conversion to gas. A lot of cars that use petrol, a lot of the transportation system.
We've been hearing that since 2020.
Yes, we hear a lot of things from government, and they seem to take forever to happen.
Exactly. You
but
talked about
that is the nature of government. Things don't happen overnight.
This one has been like what, almost a lifetime now. You will remember that it was in the Second Republic.
Yes.
I think in 1980, 1981,
yes.
The government of the day propounded austerity measures,
yes.
and they called it belt tightening.
Yes.
Now you are asking us to tighten belts more.
Yes.
Should we go to the gym?
Yes, you know, on the one hand, you go to the gym, yes, and you get fit and you can tighten your belt, but on the other hand, you also eat better and you nourish better, and so your body can accommodate.
To Nigerians. Well, you are definitely not speaking to the average.
I understand where you're coming from, but the bottom line is that everything that government wants to do is to the ultimate good of the country and the people. Sometimes it goes about it in a wrong-headed fashion. And I question the methodology by which the removal of the subsidy is being implemented. But that does not mean that the ultimate goal of removing the subsidy is not a beneficial one for the country in the long run. So let's just get the implementation correct. And
maybe we should start, just as you said, maybe we should start with the communication process.
Exactly.
Because that's being fought itself.
I think so.
Daily Independent leads with, "We can't control threats in our cyberspace." Now, that's according to stakeholders, say internet security in Nigeria too open for invasion. I don't know how to place this. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I read it yesterday, and goose pimples. I broke out in goose pimples, because so much of what we do now is technology dependent, and so much of our lives and our data and everything else and our money is all tied up in this world out there that we can't see, we can't touch, we can't feel, we can't handcuff. So it makes it very complicated. And what is more scary is the report says that certain security infrastructure have been deployed already that didn't work, that have not succeeded in protecting our technology backbone from where our data is safe, our money is safe. So what it means is that it's open season for hackers. Hackers, both in terms of the financial world, in terms of security, in terms of so many other things, we are vulnerable. So it suddenly gives one pause and says, I mean, look at how recently all social media went down for several hours in one day. And they say, well, there was some sort of failure. These are all part of the things that vulnerability to tech can cause. So I don't know what the government needs to do, if it's an issue of throwing money at it, but individually we all need to be careful about how we relate online and how much stuff we put out there. But the government also has a responsibility to create the right kind of defense mechanism that will protect everybody.
Because as we say, the Constitution says the primary responsibility of government shall be security and welfare. And security is loosely used here because perhaps it also includes cybersecurity. We have laws around that one. How effective are they? I guess we'll see. Right beneath the picture of Governor Sanwo-Olu's there, infrastructure, education, top Lagos priorities in 2022, as Sanwo-Olu proposes 1.39 trillion naira budget. Find all of that on the front page, continues on the inside page. It's about the nameplate. EFCC places Governor Willie Obiano on watch list. Is this, I mean, I don't know. What do you make of that? I mean, we all know that the immunity clause protects governor from any form of investigation. So
the EFCC is jumping the gun there because it can't be constitutional for them to take any action, whether overt or covert, against a public officer who has immunity. How far away is March 14 or March whenever that they can't wait, even if they have reason to believe? In Nigeria, we do everything in the inverse. I think that investigations should be completed, indictments should be prepared, you should have probable cause to believe that somebody has done something wrong, and then you should follow due process. He has immunity until March. You cannot now in November publicly come in to put a watch. They've actually called the National Immigration Service and say, anywhere this man wants to go, you need to inform us if he appears at any international airport. But I heard his chief press secretary, his minister for commissioner for information, say yesterday that he's currently in America and that he went out through an international airport and he was not apprehended and he was not harassed, so that it may even be the EFCC playing some political game by putting this information out there. But his commissioner for information said there's nothing to worry about. A guy is walking about freely and he doesn't believe his constitutional rights will be violated as long as he continues to hold that immunity. So let's wait and see. There's so much that flies around now that we can't ascertain the veracity of.
Most certainly, I mean, because almost all the papers have the same story. I guess, as you said, let's just wait and see.
Yes.
Dayo Akintobi, Editor-in-Chief, TCN, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Always a pleasure to be here.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
So that wraps up the papers this morning. We're back for the issues of the day. Do stay with us.